Chapter 29, The Word. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. St. John 1:14. By the word of the Lord were the heavens made, and the host of them by the breath of his mouth. Psalms 33:6. As humanity advances, a point is reached where there is a widespread recognition of an esoteric teaching beneath the letter of the law, and consequently many scholars are digging with vandal hands into the sacred mysteries, and without heeding the advice of the sages, are flinging to the world all sorts of scholastic explanations, calculated rather to bring prestige to themselves than in any way to elucidate the mysteries for the good of humanity. The day is past when the majority of mankind is content to accept any translation of the Bible as literally true, for like all scriptures, its teachings are given by means of parables and allegories, both the Old and New Testament, setting forth the vital truth in symbolic language. That is, the inner and deeper truth are veiled under symbols which of themselves inculcate a complete moral code, but which are not meant to be taken literally. From the beginning, there has always existed an exoteric teaching understood by the multitude and an esoteric teaching given only to the few whose training has fitted them to understand it. And in this cycle of spiritual unfoldment, it is advisable that a few of these mysteries be at least partially unveiled, that the spiritual discernment of the few may lead to the knowledge of the many. The Word is the voice of the higher self, the Christ within, and is the personal God of each individual, because the fleeting human personality is but the shadow cast by that which is a direct ray from the divine, the Christ within. The sun forever keeps its appointed place in the heavens, but its rays reach and penetrate every portion of the earth. Without those rays, nothing could be brought forth upon the earth. Yet we do not deny that the rays of the sun, although we know the sun is still in the heavens. Just so the higher self is the ray from the infinite, without which nothing spiritual can be brought forth in animal man. This higher self is dual, one with God, yet its earthly shadow, the human personality, is but an emanation or spark of the higher self clothed in atoms of physical matter, just as the sunbeam clothes itself in a growing plant and brings forth the perfected fruit. Thus the higher self is both the Father in heaven and the Christ within, or the sun in the heavens and the sunbeam imprisoned within the fruit. The higher self overshadows the personality, ever striving to guide and teach it that it may bring forth the spiritual man its fruit. This guidance is accomplished in many ways, in dreams and visions, by the still small voice, called by many the conscience, or if these ways fail to impress the dense atoms of the physical brain, the personality is permitted to follow the dictates of its own rebellious animal will, and learn through bitter experience to listen to and obey the dictates of the word forever being spoken within. Let me cease, O thou perfectly awakened, to remain as an ape in the world forest, forever ascending and descending in search of the fruits of folly. Ordinarily, many lives are spent in sowing the seeds of disobedience and reaping the harvest of suffering, ere the personality will heed the guidance of the divine. This overshadowing Father in heaven is called by some of the Oversoul and by the Roman Catholic Church the guardian angel, whose power over the personality is exerted through the still small voice. But in reality, this guardian is the real self, the God within, higher manas and buddhi permeated by Atma, of whom the various personalities are but temporary garments worn for certain occasions and for certain purposes, but all of which are thrown off and disintegrated when the real self is clothed with immortality, just as are the blossoms when the sunbeam clothes itself in the fruit. Science has demonstrated that the fruit is all imprisoned sunshine and water, the father and mother forces, the dual aspects of the creative force, except a small residue of earthly salts left behind as ash. Just so will the Word gradually clothe itself in spiritualized matter, with but a modicum of earth. One phase of this mystery is that as the disciple advances along the path to mystery, the Word becomes manifest to the human consciousness for purposes of revelation, even if it be but for a momentary flash that experiences evidence of an advanced step. Ultimately, the manifestation of the Word or the Christ consciousness will become continuous, as in the case of the Master Jesus, who said, "I and my Father are one," meaning that his personal human consciousness was so blended with the divine that at all times he could function in the consciousness of his Father in heaven. When this point is reached, the Word is consciously incarnated in the flesh, or the fruit is perfected. This Christ consciousness at first may come only in moments of extreme spiritual exaltation or ecstasy, when the human consciousness is transcended. Plotinus defines this as the liberation of the mind from its finite consciousness, becoming one and identified with the infinite. By many teachers, this is called cosmic consciousness, but cosmic consciousness is far more all-embracing, for it is the power to enter into and partake of the consciousness of everything in the cosmos, from Adam to God. To one who's obtained perfect mastery over the lower personality, the Father, the higher self, and the Son, the personality, have become one, and the stream of divine wisdom flows uninterruptedly through both. Physiologically speaking, this means that by repeated victories of the Word over the flesh, through the fulfilling of the law in many lives, the higher self has gradually gained increasing power over its physical vehicles, and at last has built up, atom by atom, a fleshy body so spiritualized that the atoms of its physical brain readily respond to the vibrations of the Christ consciousness, thus enabling the Word to dwell in the flesh among men, or the Son to become one with the Father. The human personality, by schooling itself to listen to and obey the inner voice at last, so stills the vibration of the human intellect that the Word is an infallible and ever-present guide in the smallest detail of the earth life. In other words, the flesh, which has so long warred against the Spirit, has become the willing and obedient servant, eager to listen to and carry out the will of the Father on earth, even as it is done in heaven. Those who find it difficult to distinguish between the voice of the higher self, conscience, and the desires of the human personality can readily determine which is speaking if they will remember that when they ask in the silence for guidance and put themselves in a listening attitude of soul, the reply will come either audibly or as a mental impression, but it will always come as a plain statement, clearly and concisely, requiring neither argument nor justification. The instant you begin to argue with yourself or need to justify your decision, know well that you are not heeding the voice of your Father in heaven, but are following the wisdom of the human intellect or catering to the human desire. The personal self always endeavors to justify its decisions with most plausible arguments, while the higher self simply asserts a fact or commands. The Word or the God within is divine essence or love, for God is love. The lost word, in one sense, is simply the lost power of hearing the voice of the Father in heaven, or realizing and correlating with the Christ within. The wisdom religion as set forth in the Christian Bible, while recognizing gods, angels, seraphim, and cherubim, and spiritual beings of every kind, no one would think of calling idolatrous. The recognition of all these manifestations of deity in no way conflicts with the injunction, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me," for it recognizes the divine unity of all. In its esoteric teaching, it helps man to understand the deep, underlying meaning of this unity and to worship divine love, which is the God before whom alone man shall have no other, and which alone he must worship in spirit and in truth. This one God he must seek and find in all things, firstly in himself, then by a recognition of his oneness with all that is, must find him in all things. He must reverence, but never worship or idolize any manifestations of him, be they planetary angels, seraphim, devas, avatara, masters, or whatnot, nor must he worship him as his own personal God, the Word incarnate in him, but must learn to separate the deity from his manifestations and listen to the voice of the one God, divine love, of which alone it is said, "I am the Lord thy God." As Epicurus said, the God exists, but they are not what the multitude suppose them to be. He is not an infidel or atheist who denies the existence of God, whom the multitudes worship, but he is such who fastens on the gods the opinions of the multitude. Only they are heathen who refuse to recognize and worship divine love or the Word made flesh. Also bear in mind the creative aspect of the Word. We read much of the limitless power of the Word properly pronounced, and it is indeed all true. But before man can pronounce it, he must gain the power of expressing every tone and semitone in nature, for only then can the creative word be sounded. This creative word is continually pronounced within him by his Father in heaven, for it is this word pronounced within him that is bringing forth his spiritual life. But ere he can pronounce it for himself, man must become more than man. All created things are the expressions of coarser or finer vibrations, hence the voice of conscience, the Word, manifesting through exceedingly high and fine vibrations, finds it difficult to call forth the response from a mind given over entirely to worldly affairs and consequently attuned to a much lower rate of vibration. But if the voice is listened for and an effort is made to follow its guidance, it has the power to create conditions at which it can manifest more plainly. Since during involition, the word of the Lord, or divine law, penetrating through all the spheres, created the heavens and firmament, and the earth, and thereby incorporated itself within every particle of matter composing them. So, during evolution, must it evolve back to its source, lifting up or redeeming all through which it is manifested, thus creating a new heaven and a new earth wherein dwelleth righteousness. The creative word manifests through nature as tone, color, form, and number, just as a written word is composed of numbers, letters, symbols, syllabus, and the meaning expressed. Hence, every tone in nature, be it song or bird, roar of beast, thunder of the heaven, be it a twinkle of a fountain, surge of ocean, or rustle of leafy boughs, is an expression of the word. And not a note in nature can be left out and the creative word be complete. Could man respond to and manifest his true vibration, his keynote, in the creative word with the single-mindedness of nature, all would be at peace, harmony, and love. Man alone strikes a discordant note, not only himself, but also in the noises of his creation, factory whistles, street noises, etc. And the effect of this inharmony is impressed upon all creation, so that thorns also and thistles shall it bring forth to thee. As man advances and learns to listen to the still small voice, and as the word unfolds within his heart and manifests in his life, so will the tones of his voice grow more tender and loving and lose their power to wound. Thus will he become more able to comfort and cheer, lead and command, for he then expresses more of the creative power of the word, until at last the word is made flesh and manifest continually. This is the secret of the power of great speakers, for they express, to a greater or lesser degree, the creative power of the word and literally create within the minds of the hearers that which they wish to impress upon them. The pronunciation of the word is a question of manifesting its guidance in the life, for every discord in the life produces a false note in the voice. Strive, therefore, to be absolutely true to the word and be willing to face yourself and to find and express truth in every tone and action. Thus will you learn to take your true place and express your true keynote in the grand symphony of life.